Hey everyone, Kilted here. Look, I got something in. Hold on, let me move my tripod a little bit. There we go. I got something in today, and I've known that this was coming in for quite a while. So I have been working my tail off all week just so I could get my day today and tomorrow pretty much cleared out to where I can work on this. And I got permission from the owner to actually film this. This came from a museum that basically it was a firearm that was donated to the museum that was supposedly owned and used by a major who served in the American Civil War, who, yeah, family kind of kept it, so on and so forth, and finally a member of the family donated it to the museum. Unfortunately, at some point in time, they actually decided it was a really good idea to cover all of the parts in this thick, nasty Rust-Oleum paint. So much so that you couldn't read a lot of the markings and things of that nature. Now, full disclosure, I've already removed most of the paint, but I will sit here and try to cut in the photos beforehand right now. Alright, so hopefully I did that right. I'm still learning video editing. Leave me alone. Anyways, so what I've done is this is just the trigger guard, right? Is I've gone ahead and removed all the paint and tried to leave as much of this patina here. Now, patina. Patina is a fancy word for rust. That's all it is, okay? It's just proof that it was neglected for a little while. Because at some point in time, these were old guns, just no longer worth the crap. And were just kind of thrown in a closet or whatever for years until finally someone was like, oh, this is a collectible. For you older guys that might be watching, you know, my age and older, think of the square bodies, right? When I was in high school, square bodies were ugly, you know, plain and simple. Nobody was restoring square bodies. Now, everybody was wanting to restore square body pickup trucks. Right, because they're just cool, right? Yeah. When my dad was a teenager, he drove around in a Mustang. I think it was a 65 or 66 Mustang. We have pictures of it. And you're sitting here talking about the late 70s, right? So it was an old beater car, right? Now it would be seen as a collectible item, right? So anyways, that's going off on a tangent. I do apologize. But some of it that we have here is here on this trigger guard, right? So it's rust, it's grease, it's oil, it's nastiness, right? I'm not going to re-blue this, right? I am going to get the active rust off, but which I've pretty much done with this one. But you can see, yeah, right up here, there's a bit of roughness. It almost looks like a frog's back. Now technically that's rust. That's patina. If I was going to restore this, I would take all this off. But since it's for a museum, I'm not going to do that. And I've got some other parts over here that have been sitting. They've already been through one round of the stripper. It's basically what it is. But I can sit here and show you a few things. Come here, you. Oh, you're goopy and gooky and everything else. So this is an eco-friendly based, right, paint stripper that I use, okay? And you see it gets kind of like this shell on it, right? And it's green and smells nice. It's not a harsh fumes or anything like that. I know a lot of people use like, there's an orange one out there that's like orange or citrus strip or something like that. I don't know. They don't have that around where I'm at, so I don't use it. But what I do use is some of this stuff, and where's my brush? Here's my brush. Sorry about that. But this is a copper brush. It's filthy, nasty because of everything that I've done. And what I do, copper is weaker than steel, right? And should be weaker than the finish that's on the steel, okay? So sorry I keep looking off. I'm still open, right? So I'm every time a car drives by, I want to make sure they're not pulling into my driveway because then I have to stop the video, right? So, but when I first started on this, you could not, and all I'm doing is this. I'm not applying a lot of pressure, right? It's just like brushing your teeth. When I first got this, they told me Remington 1850 something. That's all they were able to tell. They knew nothing else. They said there was some other stuff written on here, but they could not see it because the paint was so daggum thick. Well, now I've gotten 98% of all the paint off, and I want all of it off. That's why I'm doing it again. I don't know how well it's going to show up. Oh, it's upside down. Duh, fuck. It says Remington. Somewhere in New York, I-L-I-O-N. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. 1857 US. Right? So, yeah. Now, when museums come in, they have everything marked, right? Every marking, everything that they saw originally. This is not the first museum that I've worked with. I just get stuff in, not often, but on a fairly regular basis, right? So much so that I'm used to the paperwork. But I just sent pictures of the trigger guard again to the director who brought this in because of that. It's a JT. You could not see the JT when it first came in. And then, I don't know if you're going to see it. Anyways, right there in the middle of the trigger guard, there we go. It's an E and a B. Echo Bravo, right? So they had no clue on that. Now this barrel assembly, I have completely stripped down of all of its nastiness. I've got a few areas to touch up around the flash hole and everything, right? But this is what condition it was in underneath, right? And when I first got this in, of course, I run a bore scope down here and actually found pieces of newspaper in here, which I thought was interesting. I bagged them, tagged them, and gave them to the director, right? But other markings that are on here, you know, I've got more JTs, right, on it, which look like proof marks or manufacturer marks, right, of whoever made this. I've got to clean out the bore and everything now. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera, so sorry. But something else is this is the stock, right? And the stock is still in one piece. She has some damage here, right? And that honestly could be just from leaning up on something. It didn't have a ramrod when it came in, but she's still in good shape. She's dry, very, very dry. So I'm going to work on that. But something that I think is fascinating, first off, this is the only piece of metal that wasn't spray painted, so I've got to clean it up and get all this active rust off of it because it looks like there's some more markings there, but I can't make it out very well. And then look, we've got 2 cartouches on here, right? Oh wait, no we don't. We have 4. Well, another cartouche and another marker. 3 cartouches and a marker. But I mean, it has splits in a few areas, especially it's very common for this area to be split, and as you can see, it is split, right? I've got some damage up in here, so on and so forth. All of that is very common on firearms this old. Now, this is not the oldest firearm I've worked on. This is like the 3rd oldest or 4th. I can't really remember. But anyways, I thought y'all would enjoy this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish removing all of the paint off of this. contact the director, because he actually got a hotel room for me to get this done, and they're paying for quick, fast, and in a hurry, right? Because he wants to ship out to, or not ship out, but he wants to leave his hotel tomorrow and drive back to his museum, which is like a 10-hour drive, right? So yeah. And what I'm working on with the director, and if he does it, then I'll link his information below. But what I'm wanting is for me to sit here and do all of this work, right? And then him do a video doing some of the historical side of it, because this man, I believe, has a PhD in American history from pre-colonial days all the way through the Civil War. So he would know a lot more about this than I would. Now that we've gotten it cleaned up a good bit and can actually figure out what we've got. Now, some of you that might have been very keen on eye, and this is a little history that I'm actually going to cover just in case, is here on the side plate, where the hammer and everything is. See where all that green, all this is, right? Now there would have been a door that flopped over that, right, and closed everything up. Because this appears to be, let me get it back. So you would actually have a wheel, paper-ish wheel of a priming compound inside of it. And every time you cock the hammer, some would progress automatically, others you had to hand progress, but then you could turn around and fire it. So there was no need of fumbling with little bitty caps, right? It just cock, move it up a little bit if need be, and then fire, okay? Which meant that you could then fire your weapon a lot faster than someone who was fighting with percussion caps, because anybody will tell you that's ever done percussion, you're going to drop them, plain and simple. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And every time you drop it, you're going to sit here and go, damn it, right? So anyways, let me stop here. Let me finish cleaning everything up, right? And then I'll bring y'all back once I'm all done with that. Well, we got her done, right? And I'm going to try to, because this thing is tall. Now, I am 6'6", standing flat-footed, and it comes up to my nipple, right? I mean, there's just, right? Right? Okay. But anyways, as you can see, I cleaned off all the paint. I mean, even that beautiful brass front sight was just covered in paint. And yeah, but I sat here and cleaned up the wood really well. Let me get some more light in here, hold on. There we go, that's a lot better. But you can see I cleaned up the wood really well, cleaned up that metal support. You can still see those beautiful cartouches there, right? And as well as those beautiful cartouches. And I sat here and I showed the JT that's up here, right, earlier. It's I can't angle it to where the slings, there it is. But we also found even more. So here on the rear tang, we found out some more information. So yeah, we found this more information here on the tang, by which I've written down to do a little bit more research on, as well as here we see a P and this thing that looks like a J. Now, in my little bit of research on these two markings, the one that looks like a J is actually supposed to be an eagle head, a federal eagle head, which I thought was fascinating, right? And then of course you still got your bayonet lug here on the top. It was a socket style, so it slid on and clicked in. A lot of you would know a socket style bayonet from like a Mosin Nagant, right? But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I didn't want to sit here and of course re-blue this, because that would absolutely destroy some of the history of this. The museum director has informed me that they do have a YouTube page and that they are going to try to do a YouTube video on this. And I'm going to work in collaboration with that. So I'm going to cut this video off here, and I will splice in just in a minute. Well, it'll be a minute for y'all, or actually a second for y'all. To me, it'll be tomorrow. To where I actually go into the mechanics of this and a little bit of the history of it and that kind of thing. I know everyone is begging me to shoot it. There's two problems with shooting it though. One, we are missing the trigger, right? It you know, supposed to, and it bang, right? It no here, right? It no here. The second issue is good luck trying to find the priming ribbons that would have gone in here. And we're also missing the flap cover that would have went over, and this little bit of spring right there that you can see is supposed to be a lot bigger and firmer and that kind of thing. So this thing cannot fire. Even checking the inside of the bore, even if we had all of those pieces and parts and everything else, it would not fire, right? Just because it's just too far gone, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm going to get together all the history about these type of firearms, and then the director at the museum, who I'll tag below, will actually go over the local history of the major who actually carried this during his time in the military during the American Civil War. So, as always, y'all have fun. Stick around and listen to the rest of everything I'm going to say. Okay, so I've got a little bit more history on the Maynard system, right? So, to really discuss that system, we need to discuss firearms in general. So, in the beginning, well, not in the beginning, but early on, you know, in this country at least, when we started, we had flintlock, right? So that means you had a hammer, by which at that time was known as the cock. Get it out of your system. Okay. And that's where you get the term half-cocked. But anyways, it would hold a piece of flint. The flint would come down and strike a piece of metal. Sparks flew into a pan full of black powder, by which ignited the black powder charge inside of the barrel and shot projectile that way. Hopefully. Right? Unless some things went bad. Right? But flintlocks also had a very inherent flaw when it came to any type of moisture, heavy humidity, that kind of thing. And that was that it wouldn't go off. There was a high rate of misfires, okay? Sometimes when it would fall, if the frizzen was too corroded or too dirty, right, and it was struck, then it wouldn't make sparks, right? If the powder in the pan was a little too moist, maybe placed more on one side than the other, it wouldn't go off. If the flash hole that connects the pan to, you know, the inside of the barrel was too dirty or just filled up with carbon or crap or whatever, gun wouldn't go off. Right? So you see that there's a lot of problems with it. And for those of you who are in the military know that, you know, the average soldier is not going to take that great of care of their firearm. So in about 1807, a Scotsman by the name of Alexander Forsyth, Forsyth. I should be able to pronounce that, but I can't. So, no judgment. Anyways, he actually came up with what's known as a percussion system, igniting system. Basically, he took a bunch of different fulminates and was able to compact them together. And when they were impacted by the hammer, or still the cock at this time, it would ignite, make a loud boom. Everything was great. I can go into more detail about his life and experience a little bit, if so needed. Y'all just let me know. I'll probably do like a short video on it if need be. But understand that when he did that in 1807, he patented it, right? And I don't know all of the details of the patent, right? But he would not let other people really play with it, okay? So yeah, we didn't really get good percussion igniting systems until about the 1820s. So you're talking about 13 years later. Now, after we actually got decent systems, there's actually, you would have a small cap. Honestly, if anybody looks them up on the internet or anything, they kind of look like a tiny copper, um, hat from the day. The kind of like Abe Lincoln style, but shorter. And well, anyways, inside of that was a bunch of mercury fulminate. Ooh, good stuff, right? And so the soldier would sit here and pour in a little bit of powder, then put a ball in, pack it all the way down, then come back and reach into his pocket and get this little bitty cap, which is about that big, and would try to put it on the firing nipple, right? And seat it properly, and then cock it and fire it, right? Now, in a controlled atmosphere, that's fairly easy. But any of you who go hunting with black powder firearms like I do know that, sometimes putting that cap on there is a pain in the butt, especially when you got sausage fingers. Okay? Just saying. Now, in comes this doctor, Dr. Edward Maynard. All right? He was a dentist who was also a big fan of firearms. Always be wary of the dentist, right? I mean, it gets a little weird, okay, when they start playing with firearms. Anyways, I can get into that later as well. Now, he actually invented the Maynard primer tape. What you basically did is you had a sheet of paper, and he put pelletized mercury fulminate right here, slathered some glue along the sides and all around it, and then smacked another piece of paper over the top, right? And some had wax on it, but that's you can't confirm if he did that originally or if that was done later, and I'll get into that. Now, this was great because, one, it could be done quickly, especially on early assembly lines, or I shouldn't say or, and it was a lot cheaper because, paper cheaper than copper, right? So once he developed that, then he actually worked on the system, okay? And the system was basically a spot, and you saw it earlier, to where in the side in front of the hammer, you had an opening, and then it kind of came up like so. What would happen is you would have a roll of the tape in there, usually like 20 shots, okay, 20 primers. And what would happen is when you cocked the weapon, it would also feed, most of the time, a new primer on there, right? So then all you're left with is pour in some powder, drop a ball, pop, 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 cock, shoot, right? There is no fiddling around with a little cap anymore. Now, at first, the Ordnance Department was extremely hesitant on this new system because it was new, right? But the Secretary of War at the time, Jefferson Davis, yes, that Jefferson Davis, just saying, was actually so excited about it and so thrilled about it that he actually insisted that it be put on the 1855 Springfield musket rifle, right? And so it did. And now at first, everything went great, wonderful, hunky-dory even, right? As long as it was under controlled environments, okay? Soldiers, after they became competent with the system and everything, could fire, 3 to 5 shots in a single minute, which is unheard of with the standard percussion cap. Now, then we actually get into practical use. Now, Maynard stated early on that his system was waterproof. That turned out to be false, right? Which is where we get into a bit of a spot on, did Maynard start adding wax to the tape to help with the waterproofing, or did the Ordnance Department do that? I can't really figure that out in some of the books and information that I have. So, yeah. And what also really sucked about it was, all right, so when the hammer hit the nipple and it has the tape on there, you have an explosion, right? By which would, they say, rip off the tape and all of the, it didn't actually rip it off. It kind of exploded it, right? But what would also happen is sometimes it would cut the rear side of the tape to where it wouldn't feed. So now you're sitting here having to screw with it, and it's an itty bitty space, as you saw, to try to pull that tape out. Usually what you had to do is you had to open up the side, take out all the tape. All right, sorry about that. I'll try to fix everything in editing, but I got a phone call. By which that kind of is what happens when I try to do these videos while I'm at work, but it's pretty much the only free time I have. Anyway, so back to the system. So, yeah, so you're having to fiddle with the tape to get it back in alignment, right? That way you could shoot, and that's a little bitty space to work with, right? So you had that problem, and then you also had the problem with dirt and debris and everything else actually wiggling their way into that system to where it wouldn't feed at all. And even in the conversion that we looked at, that I got to work on, which was still really freaking cool, there was actually supposed to be a little spring up there in the neck of it that pretty much held everything in, and those springs were known to fail. I mean, plain and simple. So yeah, now to sit here and talk about conversions themselves. Basically, when they adopted this, Springfield told them it would cost this much per gun, right? But Maynard sat here and stated, well, it might not have been Maynard, it might have been somebody else, but I know Maynard was also influent, or had influence into it, right? Mainly because he was making money off of the system, and pretty much came up with a conversion system for a lot of the older flintlock muskets, okay? And Remington pretty much made a lot of stuff for the conversion. There were a few other companies that made parts as well, just to help with production time. And the muskets and the conversions were sent to Franklin Arsenal, and Franklin Arsenal is actually the one that did everything, right? So they would oftentimes cut the stock back a little bit, cut the barrel back a little bit, because those of you that don't know, with muzzle loaders, you have a barrel, which is a tube, and then the actual breech here in the back screws on or is attached some way. Not all of them were screwed, but that's a topic for another day. So they would take those off, cut it back a little bit, just to make room for this new system, right? Because the flash hole was on the side, they needed it on the top, and yeah. Reattached everything, put in the new locks and that fun stuff, and sent them out. Now, by what I'm able to read and find out, there was about like 20 or 25,000 of these conversions made to older firearms, whether they were made by Springfield, made by Remington, made by Harper's Ferry, whomever, right? And then most of them sat in storage because they had the, 1855, the new guns, right? So let's keep these in storage just in case. Well, most of them did, but about 2,000 of them, if I remember correctly from some of my reading, actually went to New Jersey for the New Jersey State Guard. And they were pretty much, by what I'm able to find, were the only ones who were officially issued them until the war. Now, once the war broke out amongst the states, several Confederates got the conversions, and some of the Maynards, because they were kept in, federal forts, and several were also on the north side, but both pretty much sat here and realized this is a horrible system. They used it as long as they had to, but when they no longer had to, because they picked up somebody else's, gun that no longer needed it, right? then they just kind of set those off to the side. So yeah. Anyways, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed doing all of it. I really enjoyed working on that. I'm hoping the museum will agree to do a bit of a collab on this video, so I can post their link below. And yeah, sorry I wasn't able to shoot it, but it's kind of impossible to shoot it nowadays. So anyways, y'all have fun.